Okay, my name is Matthew Banks, and I will be showing you a quick demonstration of pfSense today. To start off, I wanted to show you the console view, which is accessed directly from the box running pfSense. This is where the initial setup of pfSense takes place, and is primarily used when a direct connection to pfSense is required, or when the web configurator cannot be accessed. In my case, I am running pfSense virtually, so I can access the console and the web configurator from the same machine. That's a very unusual setup. Alright, well, let's move on to the more common area of pfSense that you will see. That is the web configurator. This is where almost all of your interaction with pfSense will take place. As soon as you log in, you'll be greeted with the dashboard view. This is a great place that allows you to quickly glance over important information about the system. This page can be customized to show as much or as little information as you decide you want. The most useful of these widgets is the system information, which, as the name implies, gives you a rundown of all the critical information about the box that pfSense is installed on. There are also other widgets that show the status like your services, the 5 most recent firewall logs, as well as snort alerts, which I'll explain snort later. Moving along, I wanted to show the advanced page real fast. This page you'll probably only visit after or during your initial setup of pfSense, and maybe afterwards in very specific instances. Basically here you can fine-tune how pfSense will perform as a firewall, and you can configure if and how it will perform as a routing platform as well. You're probably not going to mess with anything beyond the first 3 tabs. The last ones, miscellaneous, system tunables, and notifications, they're more just for very specific uses. There's not a whole lot to touch in here. Basically just going to leave those alone. Alright, next up I wanted to take a look at the firewall. To start us off, let's take a look at the rule sets. pfSense, its default rules are fairly good at providing okay security, though you will most likely want to create more restrictive rules to improve on that. For instance, in the LAN tab, the default rule allows any client on the LAN network to connect to any destination host. For obvious reasons, you're probably not going to want that to happen, especially like in an organization's environment. You're probably going to want to put more restrictive rules to allow connections only to company-approved areas of the network. For instance, you don't want like engineering having access to, say, accounting. That those networks don't need to be joined; they need to be separated completely. There's also another default rule, but I no longer have it in here. It was the anti-lockout rule for the web configurator. This rule does pose a minor security risk, but if you want to get rid of it, it is recommended. How you could go about doing that is you just disable it after you've created 2 rules. The first rule will set what IPs and port numbers actually have access to the web configurator, and the second one will reject connections from any other IP address outside of what you set in the first rule. Basically, once you have those in place, you can disable the anti-lockout rule and be able to get back in through your own port, custom port, and custom IPs, rather than letting just anyone try to access the web configurator. And as you probably noticed, there's names here instead of actual addresses or port numbers. That's a feature called aliases. Aliases basically allow you to link any number of IP addresses, port numbers, or URLs to a single name. This way all you have to memorize is the name, and you don't have to worry about what the addresses are or look them up constantly. Makes things a lot simpler on setting up rules for blocking and allowing certain communications. I was also wanting to take a look at the NAT tab. NAT you're probably not going to use too much other than for port forwarding. It can also do one-to-one link connections as well as outbound NATing. Those 2 are primarily used for when you're trying to take one subnet to a different subnet, or one internal network to a different located internal network somewhere else. Again, probably not going to mess with much other than port forwarding. Now for the big piece, which is packages. There are a lot of packages for pfSense, and what these do are basically add code to pfSense to improve its functionality. But you got to remember, every time you add a package, though you are adding functionality, you also are adding another potential vulnerability to the system. So only install what you really need. There are a lot of packages, and each of them has a quick description next to it of what it does. If you really want more detail or want to see the version history, you can click the package name and go to its website. For me, though, in my experience, there's only really 3 packages you really need to have installed on pfSense. The first is Snort, which is an intrusion detection, intrusion prevention system. Snort is open source and is improved upon its community every day. The community is constantly adding new signatures, new malware threats. It's very comprehensive. The other ones I wanted to show you were Squid and Dance Guardian. These two work together. Squid is a web proxy cache, so it's used to improve bandwidth by caching web pages so they can just be pulled from pfSense itself rather than actually having to go out onto the internet. But the real purpose for Squid is so that Dance Guardian is working. Dance Guardian is a web content filter. It is very comprehensive. It allows you to block websites. You can block according to keywords in such as URLs or on the web page itself. You can block websites according to their pictures. You can just block even parts of websites. It's very large. You do all this by downloading a blacklist for it and customizing access control lists. Dance Guardian is extremely important for making sure that your people on your network are not going to places they shouldn't be going to. Now let's take a look at Snort. Snort, it's a little complicated, but once you get it set up, it's good. You can set up multiple interfaces for it to listen on. Most commonly, you're probably just going to want it to listen on the WAN interface, though. In order for it to actually be able to do anything, though, you have to download rule sets. You can start the process of doing that by first registering for a free account with snort.org. They will then give you this code called an OINC master code. That allows you to download the Snort VRT rules, which are pretty much the basic rule sets. Very important to have. I also recommend the Snort community rule set. Emerging threats is good to have, but not necessary. If you have the horsepower in your machine, it's probably a good idea to have the emerging threats, but if you don't, it's okay. Don't worry about it. But definitely need the Snort VRT and Snort community rules. Then from there, all you have to do is go to the Update tab and click Update to actually get it to download the rule set from the Snort server. Then you go back to the Snort interface and click on the Edit for your interface. Then you can go to the categories and enable the rules from those rule sets that you just downloaded. You're probably going to want to enable all of them. After you've done this, Snort will begin monitoring that interface and start popping alerts. Snort has 4 priorities, 4 being the lowest, 1 being the highest. Priority 1 probably means you have an intrusion or someone is attempting to intrude on your network right now. You definitely want to check those out. Snort allows you to also add quick block rules, which will add a rule to your firewall to block an IP address and its port number that the suspicious connection is coming through. Again, you're going to want to eyeball this and just kind of take a look at it every so often and keep an eye on it. Snort's really good at catching this stuff, though. And you can set it up to do things automatically, but again, it isn't perfect like most intrusion detection systems and does have false positives every so often. Next up, I was wanting to take a look at OpenVPN, which is our preferred method of VPNing into our server. You can do this manually, but it's easy to use the wizard. It's pretty self-explanatory. The wizard walks you through pretty easily and pretty well. Basically, once you've done all this and you've set this up, you're going to have to go download one more package, the OpenVPN client export utility. And then you need to, every user of pfSense that you want to be able to use the VPN, you have to add a certificate for them. Once you've done all that and you have a certificate authority with a certificate for your server and a certificate for your user, you're going to go to Client Export, and from here you can download a Windows installer, which I recommend for first-time users, or a Mac OS X Viscosity bundle, which is sort of like the Windows installer. For first-time users, those two are definitely recommended. It will give you the GUI and everything that you need. If you're not a first-time user, though, all you really need is the config file, and that'll let you VPN into the server from anywhere in the world that you have an internet connection. OpenVPN even supports iOS and Android devices, so you can even use your phone to VPN into the network if you need to. It's really neat stuff. And last, I was wanting to show the system logs. System logs is the meat of pfSense. This is where you're going to be going a lot. It's really straightforward. The logs are pretty easy to read, but you're probably going to want to check them every so often. You're most likely going to be looking at your firewall logs more than anything. But the logs are extremely comprehensive. They show you everything about the system, everything about your gateway, how it's routing packages. It even has wireless if you're using wireless. And the firewall will give you every source and destination and how it's moving, and tells you why it blocked it or what connection it was going through. You can even connect it back to the rule that it used to actually block that connection. And then if you're using DHCP, you can see how your DHCP service is doing. You can use a portal authority, your VPNs, OpenVPN. Basically, this gives you every ounce of information of if something's wrong, this is where you're going to want to go and look. And basically, this is pfSense. There's a whole lot more to show and a whole lot more to learn, but I'm not going to take up too much of your time, so that is all. Thank you.